Hi there, it's Mark Carosa, Regional Director of Multi-Funds, and welcome to the First Time Seller Series, presented by Mazan Partners. Each of these lessons can be watched on YouTube under the search Mazan Partners First Time Seller Series. Today, I'm joined by Casey Corey, founder and president of Mazan Partners, and we're going to dig into lesson number 8, due diligence for sellers. Now, before we get started, please share this video with your colleagues. Maybe they're considering selling their practice and this video is just what they need to hear. Okay, let's go ahead and get to it. Casey, I'm excited about today's topic, and you laugh because I know it's not the most exciting, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say. But before we start, please tell us a little bit about Mazan Partners and why you decided to create the First Time Seller Series.
Thanks, Mark. Mazan Partners is a 25-year-old consulting firm. We focus on mergers, acquisitions, and succession planning specifically for the advisory arena. We trademarked a process called the empathetic buyer process to bring buyers and sellers together with a win-win scenario, because we know that in the absence of an equally satisfying transaction, the transition will not go of assets and clients will not go the way we would like it to, and it won't be acceptable to the buyer, the seller, or the clients, the most important folks. We've said in earlier lessons that the reason we do this is because buyers can do it over and over again. They get better at it every time. Most of them do anyway. Sellers usually only sell one time, and they really need to do it right the first time. So our objective here is to sort of level the playing field so that everyone is on the same level in terms of creating a transaction.
So Casey, let's start with why due diligence is important and if it's different depending upon your objectives.
Yeah, obviously you want to do your due diligence on anyone that you're going to do business with, especially in something so definitive and life-changing as a sale of your business. But there are levels of investigation that you want to perform depending on your intentions. And as you insinuate, that it could be selling to an outside buyer. That could be somebody with your broker-dealer, your RIA, or someone outside of those organizations as a buyer. You could be joining a firm with the idea that you will sell in the next, say, 3 or 4 years, or at some point in the future. And then finally, you could be bringing in your own successor to your firm, who will then buy you out according to your desires and your schedule. In each case, the type and scope of investigation or due diligence is slightly different.
So why don't we start with selling outright? Because I think there'll probably be some overlap with the other two, right?
Yeah, there is. We spoke about finding a good buyer in lesson number 3. So some of this will be a review of that, but there are 2 main areas that you want to be concerned about. First is metrics or financial strength of the buyer, and then the second is their ability to service your clients. As it pertains to financial strength, you want to ask yourself, what evidence do you have that they can actually pay for it? So do they have the money, or can they get it? And it's usually the latter. The evidence can come from several forms. The most common one is in the form of a bank commitment letter, from SBA or a conventional loan, a letter of credit for somebody that has the money, or a statement from a private equity firm which is becoming more and more common today. Even buyers' credit scores and their financial statements, their personal financial as well as their business financial statements, can be indicative of the ability to buy and pay for it. While first-time buyers can certainly be very good buyers, and we do that often, if an advisor has purchased before, it is a good sign, because not only do they, from a financial standpoint, they've done it before, they know what's needed, but because, also their standpoint of onboarding your clients, they've usually got a system for doing that because they've done it before. Seeing that buying your firm will be a profitable venture is also a good indicator. You want to ask for a copy of their projections. They'll usually have to provide one to a bank or a private equity firm, usually
Mm-hmm.
going out anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And so if you see that and you see that it's going to be profitable for them, then that's indicative of, number one, they've been prepared, and number two, they have the financial wherewithal to help you. Also, the terms of the deal are important. Let's say that they borrow the money from a bank, they get it all at one time. Typically, that's the way it works. But they're going to pay you 40% at the close. The rest of it to be paid in installments over 2 or 3 years, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to make sure is the money's going to be there when it comes time to pay you. So you want some sort of guarantee that they're not going to access those funds before it's time. So generally you use an escrow account, and then an escrow account will have escrow terms, have a term agreement that says we have to distribute this amount of money at this time. So it'll help you understand or feel comfortable that that money's been earmarked and set aside for you. Um, if they're going to be using a letter of credit, in other words, they've got the money, but they're going to use a letter of credit from the bank, um, you want to make sure you have a life insurance policy in place or something like that, that guarantees that the funds will be there. We recently had a buyer die in a car accident, who was 3 years into a 7-year payout. Um, he had used a letter of credit. He was a wealthy man, but he had used a letter of credit to buy it. And fortunately, we did have a life insurance policy there that had been assigned, so that when he passed away, our seller got paid, within, I
Mm-hmm.
think, 30 days after his death. Bottom line, you don't want to get into a long-term payout schedule unless you um, can see with some level of certainty that the money's going to be there when the time
Mm-hmm.
comes to pay you.
Right, right, right. So, Casey, how about the due diligence on their ability to service?
Yeah, this is in many ways, in my mind, as if not more important. The transition is the most important component from the buyer's point of view, because a lack of a good transition rate of clients and assets, and the ability to hold those clients long term, because these loans are 10 years usually,
Mm-hmm.
to hold on to those clients, um, will make the difference between a successful transaction or acquisition, if you will, and a failure. For you as a seller, it is important because it could affect their ability to pay you, especially if they're going to, pay you in some way out of earnings. Um, it's also, it's more important though, because the fact that you're turning clients and friends and possibly relatives over to someone else to finish what you started, the promises that you made. How would you feel if one of those really good clients came to you socially down the road and they said, man, I really wish you hadn't sold it to that Casey guy. I really don't like him very much. Or he doesn't seem to care about me the way you did. Well, you're going to be mortified. You're going to feel terrible. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to investigate how that individual plans to service your book going forward. You start with compliance. Look them up. Look them up on BrokerCheck. Look them up on the SEC site, the IAPD site. Pay less attention, I would say, to the number of marks they had. Obviously, if they got a ton of them, you want to pay attention. But more important though is why. Why are those marks there? Read the explanations. Ask the advisor about them. Sometimes they're minor things. Quite often they are. But sometimes they demonstrate a trend of issues with clients, and which is particularly problematic. And especially if somebody's got a lot of these marks, they could be drummed out of the business at some point. You don't want
Mm-hmm.
that when you've sold your book to them. So next is your service model. What is their average asset balance on the average asset balance of one of their clients? What that goes to is the type of clients that they have. Is it decidedly different from your client base? So let's say you have a $500,000 as your base or $1 million as your client base. Well, what if theirs is $100,000? Are they capable of taking care of your clients? And that's a question you want to ask yourself. What's their fee schedule? Is it different from yours, more or less? What is it? Do they offer planning? Do they charge for planning separately? Are your clients used to being charged separately for it? How much do they charge? What other services do they have? Insurance, accounting, legal, what else is in there? Even property casualty insurance is in there sometimes. How do they manage the money? Is it decidedly different from the way you do it? Is it polar opposite? You don't want to put a Graham and Dodd set of clients with somebody that's been doing technical analysis or vice versa. You can't tell the clients to change in midstream. That's a problem. How often and in what way do they communicate with the clients? In other words, how often do they talk to them? Do they do it by Zoom? Do they do it in person? Those kinds of things. Part of the issue is that, let's suppose that you see them or touch them 12 times a year. You send them emails, maybe you call them, whatever. What if this individual only does it twice a year? Your
Mm-hmm.
clients are going to feel like they're being underserved. They're going to be underwhelmed by the service that this person gives, and they're going to think, well, he's not treating me the way, Bill did or Susan
Mm-hmm.
did. How many clients does the advisor have now? In other words, do they have capacity is the question. Now you can ask them if they have capacity, and most of them are going to say, yeah, of course. But you want to dig deeper and ask them, how does that work? How are you actually going to service those clients? And then how many clients has the advisor lost in the last few years?
Mm-hmm.
The number is less important than the reason. You want to understand why they've lost clients. And if that's the case, then, there may be something problematic there. Basically, what you're trying to do is determine what the client experience is. What will the client experience be for you, for your clients under the new buyer? Will you be proud to go to your clients and say, I'm selling to this individual? I wasn't thinking about selling before, but I found Mark here, and he's the guy to take you to the next level. I'm retiring, but he'll take care of you. Are you going to feel good about saying that? At the end of the day, your clients don't care at all what you're getting paid for the book. What they do care about is that client experience. If they feel they're not being respected or appreciated as you have done over all those years, then they're not going to be happy, and eventually they're going to go somewhere else to get service. I read a survey a couple of years ago. It was done by, I believe, Merrill Lynch. It might have been UBS. And what they were trying to determine was what was important to clients. In other words, was it the client experience? Was it the performance? The investment performance? Was it, or was it financial planning? What were the, what was more important to them? And it turns out that something like 50% of the importance was on the client experience. The other two items, investment performance and financial planning, split the other 50%. So each one of them was about 25, and the client experience was by and large, by far the more important thing. How does he treat me? How does she make me feel? How attentive to my needs are they? Do they hold my hand? Those kinds of things. The other two things fit into your client experience, obviously, but it was more about that emotional support that the advisor gave. If you can't feel good about turning them over to this buyer, don't sell it to them. I mean, I've told people to walk away before because of that. Most advisors will have some level of seller's remorse. It's inevitable. But is it because you miss doing the job, miss being a trusted advisor, or is it because you picked the wrong, you bet on the wrong horse, you picked the wrong person to buy it? If it's the latter, you're going to be pretty unhappy with the whole situation, and so are your clients.
Yeah, sure. That makes total sense to me. Another question now, Casey. How about an instance where you may want to join a firm that will buy you out at some later date?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, everything I just said counts. You want to do all those things. But in this instance, since you're going to be delaying selling generally, you want to take a longer view of the financials of the firm. Suppose you're going to sell it 3 years out. You're going to join the firm. They're going to give you a formula that says when you get ready to retire, we'll give you, this is the way we'll pay you. They usually don't give you a price, but they'll say, here's the formula we will apply to your practice. And in 3 years, we're going to do that. Well, you want to know if they're stable enough to last 3 years. Or are they going to have the money in 3 years? Are they going to have the ability to do it? I've had people join firms and they look very closely at the financials of the firm, and in some cases they decided it wasn't stable enough for them. And so, that's something you want to be cognizant of. What do you get in exchange for the inevitable override that they're going to take on your book once you join them? It's usually some figure. Even if whether you're a W-2 or a 1099, they have to make money too because they're going to have expenses having you there. So they need to do that. So what do you get in exchange? Is it compliance help? Is it marketing? Is it financial planning? Is it investment acumen? But determine if those things are worth the payout difference in between where you are today and where you would be joining. I talked to a couple of guys yesterday that had joined in an accounting firm that has their own RIA, and they were wondering if the payout that they were getting was sufficient. And so we kind of walked through what they were getting for it. And I think they went into the conversation thinking that it was not sufficient. And they came out thinking, well, maybe it is because of all the stuff we get for it, including leads that they were getting from them. But you want to know what that is. You obviously want to know, what the formula is that they're giving you, and then you want to know if there's a successor there, that already, or are they going to need to go recruit that person? It's usually, often it's worth that change, that difference. Sometimes it's not though. How many advisors do they have? In other words, do they have a number of advisors that you can choose from to become your successor, or do they just have one guy or gal?
Mm-hmm.
Ask the other advisors, why did they come to this firm, and why do they stay? And ask as many as you can, because if you ask the firm owner, they're going to give you the number one people, the ones they know are going to give you a good answer. Try to ask as many as you can. Have any advisors left recently? And if they have, why'd they leave? They leave under duress, or did they leave because of they wanted to, or were they not getting what they thought they were going to get? Those kinds of things. And after you've looked at all these things, again, consider what they're going to pay you while you're there. In other words, sometimes if you're a W-2, they pay you a salary or a draw or something like that. Is that going to be sufficient for your needs? And this is all, whenever you join a firm or you sell, everything you should be worried about in my mind is, what are my needs? Does this transaction fulfill my needs? And
Mm-hmm.
what if what if you want to keep your hand in after you retire? You work 3 years, but you want to keep working a little bit as time goes on. Are they going to be open to that? Whatever you decide is important, make sure it's in writing. Make sure that everybody signs on the dotted line that this is what we agree to. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to that said, this was promised to me 3 years ago when I joined, I never got it. Get it in writing, that this is what's going to happen, and that there need to be consequences if you don't get it. One of which could be you just walk away and take your book with you, and no one cries foul. I call that a
Right,
prenup
right.
or an escape hatch. And we put that in almost every deal that we do where somebody's joining a firm. Um, that, I
So,
think those are
yeah.
the things.
Okay, yeah. And my last question of the day, Casey, what about successors?
So successors in this case is not somebody that you already have in your firm. This is someone that you would have to go out and find. Somebody you're going to hire or merge into your firm, or acquire a book and they're in there. A lot of times you'll acquire a book, the owner will go away, but there'll be a non-owner advisor in there that would love to own a book, so they become the successor. But this is, you're looking at a successor that would come and join you. They still have to have the ability to get the money, so credit scores and things like that. Now you're going to have some influence on the way that they buy. I mean, we did one here recently where the seller said to the successor, "I don't need a big chunk. I need a pension." And so,
Mm-hmm.
as long as the money is there to cover it, they'll be fine. But you want to make sure that they're going to be able to do that. Service model hopefully will be your service model if you're bringing a successor in, but
Mm-hmm.
you want to look at what they did before. How did they run their practice before? Is this going to be a big change for them? In which case they need to commit to doing it your way, again in writing, or hopefully you've got somebody, you find somebody who does it in a similar way. You're not going to find a mini me or a carbon copy of you. That's very, very rare. But they have the same values, they have the same um, approach, opinion on how often you see clients and how much you charge them, all those kinds of things. Um, but see how they run their practice. Compliance records are obviously important. You don't want to bring somebody in that's going to give your firm a bad name. um, Credentials are important. Suppose you've been telling your client, we bought a book from a lady in North Carolina last year, where she had been selling her clients for years on the fact that she was a CFP. She felt like
Mm-hmm.
that a certified financial planner was really important designation. She was not going to sell to somebody that didn't have one. And if you've been telling your clients that, to go back to them and go, well, he doesn't have it, but he's still a good guy or gal or girl, woman.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm from the South. We say gal a lot. Forgive me. But anyway, I mean, if that's important to your clients, then that should be important to you and a successor. Average client size, you want you want to look at that. If your clients are relatively sophisticated, will they respond to someone who has fewer years in the business or less experience? Remember the fellow I talked about a minute ago that died? He was 60. He had two daughters, both in their 20s, 23 and 25. They wanted to keep the business. They were the advisors. They wanted to keep the business. But the one with the most experience only had 5 years of experience. While the clients liked them, they'd known them, they'd grown up with them, seen them go through college and high school and so forth. They were bleeding clients left and right because they go, look, we love you, but you're not experienced enough to handle my account. I got $500,000 or $1 million with your dad. You can't handle that. They didn't feel like they could. So we finally had to bring in a individual who had a little bit of gray hair. I think he was 48 years old or something, and demonstrated a lot more experience. Plus, he had 25 years of experience in the business, and the bleeding stopped. But they lost a third of the book before that happened.
Oh.
So it's a really important to note whether or not your successor is going to be able to take care of your clients. Maybe not today, but certainly in the next year or two, are they going to be able to cover, be somebody that the clients can feel good about? And you want to bring them into the meetings and get them introduced, right from the beginning. But again, if they're not ready, then that can be a problem. Succession plans usually become effective not just because somebody retires, but quite often because somebody died or they became permanently disabled. What about their personality? Are they the type of people that your clients will respond to? You would know that better than anyone. Are they going to respond to this individual in a positive manner? Finally, you want this advisor to have his or her own book. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that there's an indication that they can continue the book because they've done it before. They've maybe not built a business as big as yours, but they've brought in clients. They've found clients. You want to ask them how they built their book. One is, did they build it, or did they buy it, or did they inherit it? If it's the latter two, that's questionable because that doesn't give you indication that they can do it. The second reason you don't want to do it is because you'd be in deficit spending. There is cost to bringing a successor in. And if that person doesn't have enough of a book to kind of pay for themselves, then you're going to be footing the bill. So you have to decide whether or not you're willing to do that or not. And the best way to know if somebody can sell or accumulate clients or even service clients is whether or not they've done it before, with their own clients. And so those are the things that I would be most concerned about.
Well, Casey, I've enjoyed our time today, and I believe it's been another insightful lesson. I hope we've given financial advisors that are considering selling their practice some powerful insight. Also, a little nudge to them to share the info with colleagues that may be in this position as well. Now, next time, we're going to dig into lesson number 9, deal term negotiations. In the meantime, please send your confidential questions to mark.carosa@multifunds.com or see Corey at mazonpartners.com. And until next time, here's wishing you and your clients health and prosperity.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Casey.